Mr. President, thank you very much for giving us some of your time. Russia invaded this country 4 months ago because it wanted to drive a wedge between Ukraine and the West. It didn't want Ukraine to get too close to the West. The opposite seems to be happening now with the EU formally accepting Ukraine as a candidate. How important is this for you? How historic of a moment is this?
Very important. For me, it was always very important for Ukraine not to become a buffer zone. Exactly like that, from the point of view of geopolitics. The Ukrainian people chose the European way, the relevant values. These values correspond in Europe, the United States and Ukraine, and we want to be part of these values. Yet, once upon a time, there was the Soviet Union. We were part of this state. We were part of this Soviet Union. Our parents were born there, and I was born there in those times. However, today we want to be independent. Even before the Soviet Union, Ukrainians wanted to have their own land, their own traditions, and I believe this is normal if one respects Ukraine's choice of sovereignty. At last, we have independence, and you see how hard we are fighting for it, and how we are fighting for these values.
2 Americans answered your call, as many did, to come here and fight for Ukraine's democracy. They were captured. The Kremlin won't rule out that they could face the death penalty. Can you do anything to help their case?
First of all, I want to sincerely thank all those heroic fighters from countries all over the world who have come and volunteered to defend our independence. I have said, everyone understands, that today this war in Ukraine is here on our lands, but however, tomorrow the war could be in Europe and the day after tomorrow in the United States. Therefore, it is utterly fair to say that this war in Ukraine, it is already a war in Europe, a war in the US. It's just that in terms of territory, it is happening here. And so I'm grateful to all our heroes. This is war. You know that, unfortunately, there are thousands of Ukrainian prisoners of war as of today. That's what war is like. And there are also guys from the UK and brave guys from the US who unfortunately have been taken captive. We treat them just like Ukrainians. What can the president do? Right now, in the intelligence services, we are negotiating with the other side, which holds our prisoners captive. We are discussing Ukrainians in the same way as guys from the US or from the UK. Our task is to liberate every one of our fighters.
Are there any active negotiations going on right now to help these Americans, to get them out?
So I want to stress once again that right now our intelligence services, the main intelligence department, the chief, the head of the intelligence himself is dealing with precisely this. There is a center, a specially built center, where there are specialists working only on this problem, and there they are speaking of returning POWs. I'll stress once again, unfortunately, prisoners of war from other countries, Ukrainians, everyone. The fact of the matter is that by not releasing British or US soldiers, you understand perfectly that Russia is just doing so in order for these countries to communicate with it, which, because of this aggression on the part of the Russian Federation, have very fairly isolated this political military leadership, because they, with their first steps, have isolated themselves from the civilized world.
I know you speak English. Is there something you would like to say directly to the families of those 2 Americans?
Yeah, with pleasure. Yes. I'm not sure that I'll find very important words, but they will be. You have to be sure that they will be from me, from my heart, and I think from hearts of all the Ukrainians. That you guys, what can I say? They are heroes. And for me, they are the same like Ukrainians, because they give, and they gave the main things they had, their lives, their lives. But I'm sure that we'll fight for them and we'll get them back. And of course, they will come back to your families, to their children, or to their, their relatives, parents. And for me, it's a great honor that there are in the world some soldiers, some people, just people which are not afraid, not afraid, and they came to support us, our sovereignty and our independence. And of course, I want also to thank for all the American families. I know in all the small cities, small villages, I think so that they are also brave, like our people in these small villages, which after attack from Russian side, they just came out from their houses, and they blocked all the roads, our Ukrainians, and did everything. And I know that in these small villages in USA, I saw a lot of video where people just, on their window,
they hang something?
Yeah, they hung their flags, our yellow-blue flags. So thank you for the support.
There are reports, rumors, they're not confirmed, that Vladimir Putin is sick. The Kremlin denies it, but there are these reports that he shakes, that he had cancer. Do you know anything? What do you believe? Is he sick?
Yeah,
to be frank, I don't know what is happening with Vladimir Putin, but I believe that over there they are very sick in general. But it seems to me it's more complex than the disease that you're talking about. This is a sickness related to the respect of our people, a sickness related to invasion, a sickness in terms of the torture committed on our lands. I feel that this is a complicated moment, that we are talking about a sickness, and unfortunately this is not a question of one person. I understand that unfortunately many people in Vladimir Putin's entourage are sick with overinflated ambitions, unnecessary ambitions, with no understanding or respect towards international law, or simply no respect towards people's lives. For me, people's lives are priceless. This is the most important thing we have. Life is our treasure. For them it's nothing. It's simply a resource. I think this disease is dangerous for our country. As for the other stuff, I feel it's just rumors. I'm not interested.
You want Russia to be declared a state sponsor of terrorism. Do you think it would matter? Sanctions don't seem to be slowing down Russia's offensive. Why would this change things?
It's very important. I want to thank the Senate, the United States, and the President for supporting this resolution of declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, and the policies of sanctions, which you have already mentioned. All of it is working. All this is isolation. This economic isolation is the isolation of the Russian Federation from the civilized world. It's working. It's just not a very fast process. Unfortunately, when an embargo is put on oil production, the question is whether everyone does it. This embargo, have they introduced? Yes. Because when sanctions aren't introduced on a 100% basis, you won't receive a 100% result straight away. I really want all sanctions to be upheld by all nations. And then there would be a real blow, an immediate blow. But you see that with all these talks and dialogue, well, you see democracy has its pluses and minuses. I believe that there are many more pluses, but nonetheless, in these things, I feel when you are defending democracy, you shouldn't look for long explanations and talks. We need to bring in tough sanctions, because when a terrorist state is attacking you, only a show of strength can stop it. And strength is in unity, so sanctions will work. The question is just of time. That's how it is.
You are now recognized around the world, but people don't know as much about how you think. Your wife told this story in a relatively rare interview in The Economist. She said that on the first night of the war, it was the middle of the night, She woke up to the sound of what she thought were fireworks, and she opens her eyes in bed and sees you already fully dressed in the other room, and you say to her, "It's started." What were you thinking at that moment? What went through your head? What did you do next?
I only thought about us, about our nation. I only thought of Ukraine. I immediately went to my office. I was ready. I was prepared, for want of a better word. I didn't waste time on reflecting. We gathered immediately, gathered our military committee, and we were ready to fight back. There is no point wasting any more time on this moment. The main thing is to make a decision, not delve into what will happen tomorrow or the day after. You need to think of what's happening now.
There's a now legendary story that the Americans in those very early moments offered you safe passage out of the country, presumably so you could set up a government in exile, but that you said, "No, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." Is it true? Did you do that? And how did it happen?
I think yes, but it happened. I think it happened many times. At that moment, those days, the first day of the war, a lot of leaders called me by phone and told me that you have to go, you have to ride, you have to run, and a lot of them, it was also from heart. It was very directly, very openly, because they wanted just to help, and they said we can give you all you want, all you need, airplanes or helicopters, cars or something more. And I said, no, I don't really need any cars. We need weapons, and we'll stay here. And also a lot of phone calls was about my family. If you decided to be in country, that is your decision. But what about your children, wife? Maybe we can help you with this situation. That was okay. Thank you. Thanks, leaders, for this proposition.
Well, clearly you decided to stay, and you're still here. And many have said that your decision to stay and go out onto the streets during the bombardment, not very far from here, and say to Ukrainians, your president is here, your government is here, was a turning point in this war. Do you think that?
I think that it helped. I doubt it was a turning point. Or even if it was a very important moment, or even a turning point, that's not for me to say. I think it's hard for me to be objective here, but I know for sure that it was a very important moment for the people of Ukraine. When there is bombing, shooting, when there is a full-scale invasion, they needed a president here who wasn't going to run off somewhere, who was ready to defend them and stand side by side with the people, side by side with the soldiers to defend our country. It was definitely, I don't know how much it helped. It's not for me to judge, but it definitely supported, coordinated our people. The people understood what the government was going to do, and that the government was ready and was definitely not going to desert its people, because we are the people. We are selected from the part of our community, and there was no other way we could have acted. I think it was the right choice. But even if I wasn't president, I still would have stayed here.
All Western intelligence agencies, certainly all the officials I was speaking to, said that the Ukrainian government was going to fall, that the Ukrainian security services would fall in days, that Kyiv would be quickly captured, that Russian forces would just overwhelm the country and the capital. It didn't happen. Do you think that the West, perhaps also Vladimir Putin, underestimated Ukrainians, underestimated you?
I believe they underestimated Ukraine in general, on different levels and in different ways. And I think that this, on the one hand, this is definitely a positive, because if they knew that I would stay, that the government would stay, that people would go out to defend their homes with their bare hands, I think if they knew, they would have prepared for this war more thoroughly. That's why this underestimation does not insult me. I think the opposite. It gave us an edge, precisely the time we needed to beat back our enemy and to deoccupy our nation. And regarding the many intelligence agencies, then I think that it's very difficult, having the facts that intelligence agencies had. It's very hard to correctly estimate our ability to survive. It's very hard, because you are not standing where I am. If it doesn't affect you personally, if it's not your child they're killing, it's not your home that's burning, it's not your house they're setting fire to, it's very hard to understand properly, because before this, none of us had been in this situation, and as such, how we would act in such a hard situation, in a state of shock. Many people were in shock, they were fighting in shock, normal people, not soldiers. Therefore, before it happens to you, it's hard to say how you are going to react.
You mentioned shock. There is a iconic photograph of you in Bucha, and you look exhausted. After Ukrainian forces pushed the Russians out from the suburbs around Kyiv, your forces, journalists, investigators uncovered widespread evidence of atrocities. What was it like for you to see your fellow countrymen executed on the streets, their hands bound behind their backs? Did it change you?
You know, firstly, you'll answer what it was like for me, and then if it changed me. Sometimes when you watch a movie, a good movie, a Hollywood movie, say Saving Private Ryan or something, you are in shock when seeing how it all happens. You are amazed at the level of cinematography, graphic. You understand, wow, this just isn't possible. Then you leave the cinema theater and you think, well, that just happens in movies. Basically, you don't believe it all fully. With what you saw in Bucha, there was a terrifying feeling and understanding that it looked like something from a movie, a violent war movie, about the effects of war. But in that moment, you realize that this is no movie. It's not from a book. It's not a biopic. It's nothing like that. It has nothing in common. It's reality. And reality is more terrifying than the film I told you about. There is less blood than in a Tarantino movie and less shooting than with Spielberg. It was just so quiet. Everything was destroyed. Dead people. Destroyed army equipment. There was the sense of death. And you understand that reality is scarier than any movie. And the thing that changed me or surprised me was, before I didn't think that people were capable of this, that people are capable of such atrocities. When they found people in the bottom of wells, hands bound, raped and murdered, they'd done everything to them. I just didn't know that this could be done by people who, 30 years previously, we had lived together in the Soviet Union, in one country. I just never had thought that humanity could be capable of this. And this changes how you look at people.
We spoke to a 10-year-old boy whose family was killed in front of him. We spoke to a 57-year-old Ukrainian woman who was raped by a Russian soldier. And she says that she told him, I could be your mother. I'm old enough to be your mother, but that he wouldn't stop. You must have heard stories like these. How do you go on? How do you keep coming out, doing your daily videos, telling Ukrainians, we must keep going? Or does it inspire you to fight harder?
They cannot break us, even if they decide to bomb us all and all our cities. They cannot break our nation, and we have shown this. They have shown they are not our equals, because people, good people, cannot act this way, the way they did this. And these examples you know, and the hundreds of examples that I know, that I have lived through with these people, and exactly what happened in Bucha and everything else I've seen. It's something I've lived through with all the people, what happened in Bucha. And because of this, I have become stronger, not the other way around.
Why do you think it's happening? There are many conflicts. I've covered many conflicts. There's often lots of death, but not always executions and rape. Do you think this is coming from the top? Do you think these are rogue soldiers, drinking too much, bad leadership? Why do you think this is happening, that there are now thousands of allegations of Russian war crimes here? Thousands of them.
Thousands.
Why?
Very difficult question. I think that is not even a question. That is something was, something was broken with mentality, with them. Something.
This reminds me of people who have been starved, who have lived in wild forests, who have never seen women before, who have been locked up in prisons and then released and sent out with weapons, saying to them, do what you want. The entire beast lurking inside of them has erupted out. And why this happened, there are lots of answers. The leadership there had a great influence through the mass media, because all these people are not free. They don't choose what to watch, what to read, what to do. They live in this informational forest, this dead, dark forest of information. They live within it and don't understand how civilization is developing. Every day the TV tells them that they are an uber nation, like what happened with the Nazis, that they are a superior nation, they are special, and everyone else is second, third, fifth class, like meat in a butcher's, of different sorts. The same thing is happening here. It's an information policy, and this always comes from the top. Always. The leadership doesn't say, hey, go and rape someone. The leadership created people who are capable of such horrible steps. This is what happens. It only happens in cases and in societies where people aren't given something and are allowed to turn into animals. That's why they've taken away their rights, freedom of choice, democracy. They don't have any of these values. They don't understand the worth of a human life, because they don't decide what they do, how to do, where to go, what to do for work, what to watch on TV, what to watch on the internet. They don't decide. This system decides for them.
President Putin and Russian state media, Russian officials on down the line say that they're fighting against Nazis, that you are a Nazi, that the Ukrainian forces are Nazis. Do you think they're trying to dehumanize Ukrainians? And that's maybe responsible for the brutality? Because you say you're still struggling to figure out why. They're saying that you are less than human. You're Nazis, you're vermin, and therefore you deserve to get raped and killed and brutalized. Because that's what's happened in many other countries where there have been war crimes, and I'm wondering if you think the same here.
You know, I look back to my second or third year of university when I studied criminology. And in our practicals, we studied various cases, various crimes, and it was a very simple understanding. How can a person take drugs or whatever, and the first reaction when you talk to this person is that they will always say no. The drug addict will always deny he's an addict. An alcoholic will always deny he's an alcoholic. He's not joking. He will always answer tensely with plenty of detail. He will answer the same way under investigation. He will answer this question with lots of details, and many times, as he has a memorized answer. This is what's happening with them. Who is always saying that there is a problem of fascism in Ukraine? It was Russia, where they have very radical views on human rights. They exhibit Nazism in their crimes, in the level of atrocities they have left in their stead. That's all. They have been demonizing Ukraine by saying, there are Nazis here. What Nazis? They know that my family, I have Jewish blood, that my family was tortured by the Nazis during the Second World War. And it's a well-known fact that we have the lowest level of anti-Semitism than nearly any other country in the world. It's a very interesting stat. It wasn't done by Ukrainian analysts. Therefore, I believed that they have justified their own crimes. This is how they have justified it.
You went from being an actor and a comedian now to making life and death decisions about the future of your country. Your country's future is on the line. If you lose this war, there's a possibility, you've said this many times, that Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. What have you learned about leadership facing this enormous challenge?
Whatever my profession, before everything, I am a Ukrainian. I love my country. Before everything, I'm a man who loves his family, his children, his wife, his home. I think that these values don't depend, these main things of our life don't depend on your profession, what profession you have now, and it's not important who you'll be in the future. The main thing is that during the whole period of your life, you remain a good person, open, strong, and very patriotic. And I think these values shouldn't change in a person. They come from your parents, from great teachers you come across in life. When you grow up, from school, university, and your surroundings, your friends, all these things. Also, it's still important not to be stupid. How do you say better?
Not stupid.
Not
stupid words.
I think it's very important.
How do you make decisions? Are you slow to make decisions? Impulsive? Do you speak to your inner circle, your wife? What's your process?
Аналізую.
I analyze. I always try to analyze a few opinions. I always allocate a concrete amount of time for this. I have no time to philosophize. And there are things that require time when you make decisions about them that you must analyze, having a few opinions, sometimes from professional people who are in our team. There are government officials, there are various scientists, activists who are not in a part of authorities. I think that sometimes your head, so to speak, should go outside your office and see what's happening on the street. Knowing people's opinions is very important too. Sometimes I talk to my parents, sometimes to my wife on different topics, and I make many decisions by myself.
You have had to pull out forces from first Mariupol in the south and now a key city in the east. Are you in a stalemate? Are Ukrainian forces in a stalemate there? It seems like there's small advances from each side every day and huge numbers of casualties. Can you continue in this way for a long time? How do you change the stalemate?
One has to understand that it's not only we who are losing. Russia is losing too. Where we lose one person, Russia loses 5 people. Where we lose one tank, they lose 5 tanks. That's how we are fighting. But you have to be fair and admit that it's difficult for us because the numbers don't match. Because our tanks are outnumbered by theirs by 10 to 1. Our soldiers are outnumbered by theirs by 10 to 1. And no matter how strong we are, they outnumber us by 10 to 1. And it's very difficult. Yeah, it's difficult for us, but we are standing. We are moving forward somewhere, and somewhere else we are retreating. But facing Russia one-on-one, I understand that it is going to be difficult for us, and probably we will not be able to hold out. Therefore, support is of paramount importance, support from Europe and first of all from the United States. We need support from everyone in the United States, from F society and up to the President Biden. And it's very important because everyone has to understand that it's not our war. It's not just a war between Ukraine and Russia. It's a war between the whole civilized world and the Russian Federation, their political and military leadership and their army. And everybody has to understand this. We will not be able to hold out one-on-one with them, and thank God that we are getting support.
You've received a lot of weapons from the United States. Not only does Russia have more troops and more weapons, it sounds like they are using them more on the battlefield. Our understanding is that for every artillery shell that Ukrainian troops fire, the Russians fire 10 back on to them. It sounds like you're going to need a lot more weapons if you're going to change the balance of power here, or the balance of this struggle.
Yeah.
That's it, exactly. We have nowhere to go. We are at home. And what are they fighting for? So far, they are fighting for what they were told to do, for some words, for some fantasies about Nazism, for a sort of denazification. It's not clear what they are dying for. We know what we are dying for. We have a clear understanding of what we are doing, but you are right, they outnumber us by 10 to 1. And yes, the US gave us support. And I'm grateful to them, and I'm grateful to the President, but we need a lot more. That's true.
What does victory look like for you? And how does this war end?
The war will end for sure. I'm sure it will end with Ukraine winning, whatever happens. No matter how difficult it is for us, we must oust the occupiers from our land. For as long as we can, we will do that. That's our life. That's our path. In what other way can the war end? Only in this way.
Are you worried that the West will lose interest in Ukraine, become exhausted from this war, focus on other things, and that you'll be increasingly isolated over time?
I am worried about this thing, indeed. I really feel sometimes I hear some words, some calls to slow down in providing aid. I see it happening. It's happening all over the world. But by no means must we lose. I'm talking about the whole world. I think this victory will be shared, and it will be a victory for the United States as well as for Ukraine and for European states. I do believe in this victory. If we lose, whatever they say, then democracy will lose, which means the United States will lose. That's my opinion. The European states will lose who declare the values that we have been talking about so much. I know it's not easy for everyone. I understand that it's a long distance, that it is probably difficult for some countries to understand exactly what is happening here, but they have to. It's a big task of journalism. And I'm grateful to you for being able to talk to you now. And it's a task for us to show what's going on here and that we are fighting for the same things as you. And that the war has no boundaries. Currently, the war is happening in Ukraine. But that means that the war is happening everywhere in the world. I'm sure about that.
From the start of this war, you were Russia's target number one, and you will probably remain a marked man for a long time. And when you look at what happens to Russia's other critics and enemies, do you ever think about your legacy?
After me, there will be a united Ukraine, a united people, and that's what's happening. Our people are no longer divided by where they come from, be it from the west, from the center, or from Donbass. We're all united, and this war has united us. That's true. And I'm sure that after the war is over, we will rebuild our country. I don't know how much time we will need for that, how many people, how much money, and how many experts. Nevertheless, it will be a great positive thing. We will build a new state, a dream state. And yesterday, we were granted the candidate member status by the European Union, and I believe that we will be a member of the European community. It's not a bad thing, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.